Daniel, we see pretty much from PCE reading yesterday and all the previous inflation readings we've seen pretty much over the last 12 to 18 months, the price of pretty much everything, whether it's consumer goods, financial goods, everything is rising. And some may say, well, are the price of these things rising, or is the value of our dollar falling? But I think that the interesting thing is, looking at the strength of the dollar versus other currencies, it's actually pretty strong and strengthening. And it led me to think, how bad is the inflation problem in these other countries? Let's take Chile, Poland, South Africa, and Turkey, which has declined in double digits versus the dollar in the past 6 months alone.
What we're seeing is that the dollar is strengthening on a relative basis, basically because, yes, the Federal Reserve is undertaking very aggressive monetary policies, but it is the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and other countries are undertaking much more aggressive monetary policies. So, for example, we see that the Turkish lira is at all-time lows, basically because the central bank remains very aggressive printing lira and also lowering rates. Whilst in Argentina, in so many other countries, we see that the inflation rates are much higher. We're talking about countries in which the inflation rate is 50%, 40%. So it's really, really steep because of this currency debasement.
What does that mean for foreign investment and for actually doing business in these countries?
Inflation and currency debasement are extremely negative for foreign direct investment. Prolonged periods of inflation generate weaker levels of growth and weaker levels of investment, basically because what investors are not wanting to do is to lose money when they invest in a country, because the gradual erosion of purchasing power of the currency is going to be even worse in net present value terms, if you look at an investment for a prolonged period of time. In the case of investment as well, one of the things that inflation does is that in these countries, investors don't want to invest in local currency because it's going to be wiped out by debasement of the currency. Therefore, what happens is that the dependence on the US dollar is increasing. Turkey, Argentina, Iran, all these countries are becoming more dollar dependent, not less dollar dependent. The loss of the confidence in the local currency makes the investors, both local and foreign, and domestic savers, and obviously anyone that has a salary in local currency, try to look for any alternative in any other currency.
If these countries are becoming increasingly dependent on the dollar, does this give the Fed even more reason to not tighten too quickly, or to make sure there's enough liquidity in the market for these countries?
That is one of the perverse incentives, is that on the one hand, very aggressive loose monetary policy from the Fed leads other countries to do the same, but without having the demand of their currency in international markets. And then when those countries see elevated levels of inflation and weak currencies, then the Fed needs to continue to pump liquidity because these countries become more dependent on the dollar. So it's almost like a double negative, if you will, the consequence of copying the Federal Reserve policies without having the global demand for your currency that the US has.
Do these central banks, not the Fed, these other smaller central banks, do they have to embark on this path?
They shouldn't. They shouldn't. And it's something that numerous economists constantly tell them. It is lunatic to copy the policies of world reserve currencies when you don't have one, because the demand locally and internationally of your currency is actually eroding, but they still do it.
What do you think the consequence of this is? We've spoken before, and I believe you feel the inflation here in the States at least is going to run hot until the end of next year. If we're talking about 40 and 50% inflation in these smaller countries, how long before they can get out of this?
It's very difficult. Once you get into high inflation, it's very difficult for these countries to go back to normal levels of inflation. That is the big problem of, let's say, running the very dangerous bet of let's try to let inflation run loose for a little period of time and then try to control it, because inflation works almost like a large vessel. No, even when you push the brakes, it continues to the momentum continues to build. No, so the problem for many of these countries is that the erosion in the confidence of on the local currency is unstoppable, because local citizens, but also foreign investors, don't have any trust in the local currency. Therefore, it's very difficult to rein in inflation.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, leave your comments below, and keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.